A hard-hitting mystery that drags you deep into its secrets and exposes the bizarre possibilities of human behavior. A Saudi doctor tells the chilling story of a family shattered by black magic, but in a way no one could have imagined. A series of mysterious events that science has failed to explain. This is a story unlike anything you've heard before, and I guarantee it's your first time hearing it. A simple like costs you nothing, my friend, but it helps me a lot. So let's start today's episode. Peace be upon you. I'm Ali Ahmed, and today's story is from Dr. Majed, a Saudi doctor from Buraida in Al-Qasim and one of our loyal viewers. He recalls, "About 3 years ago, I finished my doctorate, and shortly after, I landed a job. That opportunity pulled me all the way to Jeddah. A move that completely reshaped my life and marked the beginning of my real journey as a doctor. My specialty landed me a position in a forensic institute, right in a department known as Autopsy, the very place where the dead reveal their secrets. Here, a pathologist examines every clue, every detail to uncover the real cause of death. Was it nature or a human hand? And that's when it hits you. I'm not just a doctor, I'm a morgue doctor practicing inside one of Jeddah's most well-known hospitals. I started working in 2021. At first, I wasn't hired in my specialty. I began instead as a supervisor for critical cases. Whenever a patient was admitted to intensive care, a specialist would examine them, run tests, and set out a plan of care. My role was to take over those care instructions during the night shift, moving from room to room in the ICU, making sure each patient was stable. And once everything was in order, I could finally relax in my office. But if they ever need my intervention, I'm right there, always following the lead of the main doctor. After giving you a simple breakdown of how I work, let me tell you a story I've never had the courage to share with anyone before. Maybe you'll call it shyness or something else. The last time I mentioned it to a friend, his response was, "You're a doctor, you should be more rational. Stop letting imagination and work pressure get to you." And yet, I still believe it. It all started in March 2021, barely 2 months after I took the job. By then, I had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the night shift, overseeing critical patients in the ICU from 10 at night until 9 the following morning. And throughout all that time, nothing unusual had happened. Not a single crisis, not even one death. Early in the 3rd month, I was summoned one night to handle an emergency case. I did everything I could, but we lost him. From what I saw, it was clear he was suffering from a severe loss of blood, almost as if his body had none left at all. I called the ER nearby, and the ambulance rushed in, but only moments later, death was declared. According to his records and lab results, everything pointed to a stable condition, nothing life-threatening. But what I saw was different. The patient died from severe blood loss. How? I honestly can't explain, but the symptoms were right there in front of me. In the end, the case was handed over to forensic pathology, and in my report, I recorded the clinical signs that in my view led to his death. The real shock came after the autopsy. His body didn't contain a single drop of blood. Impossible, right? He was alive just hours before, gradually deteriorating before my eyes. I was called that day, did everything I could to save him, yet he died. Science says a person cannot live if blood levels fall beyond a certain point. Yet this patient died with absolutely no blood inside him. This bizarre medical case left the pathologists utterly baffled. None of them could figure out what had actually happened. The body was eventually presented to the most senior doctors in the hospital in the hope that someone could explain it. And just like the others, I too went to see it with my own eyes. After all, my background was in forensic pathology, though the patient's file was ultimately closed without answers. The cause of death was believed to be the patient's own white blood cells turning against his red blood cells, triggering a total collapse of his blood system, ultimately leading to his death. Yet, this was only a theory. No one ever truly discovered the real cause. Days passed, and everything seemed to return to normal. I went back to my usual routine, watching over patients through the long hours of the night while waiting for the day I'd finally be transferred to work within my specialty. But exactly 10 days later, another patient was admitted into the very same room where that strange death had occurred. The patient had just undergone surgery, and by all measures, it was a brilliant success. His vitals were steady, and within a couple of days, he was supposed to be discharged from the ICU. But that night, everything changed. His health began to decline alarmingly fast in a way that defied explanation. The attending physician supervising his room urgently requested my intervention. What's terrifying is that the same tragedy repeated itself. The patient kept collapsing gradually, and every measure we tried failed, until his heart finally gave out. Yet this time, something strange caught my eye. The name on the test results. The patient turned out to be the brother of the man who had died just 10 days earlier under those bizarre circumstances. In case you missed it, the man who passed away 10 days ago from blood deficiency had his name written in the medical reports, and I said his death was strange. But then, another patient appeared. He bore the exact same father's name and surname. It was as if they were literal brothers from the very same family. That alone was enough to raise my suspicion, but I held back until the autopsy would reveal the truth. After all, the second patient showed identical symptoms. Dr. Majed continues. Believe it or not, the second patient also died in the exact same mysterious manner. During the autopsy, the body contained not even a drop of blood, though he had walked out of surgery alive and well. The incident forced the hospital's administration to conduct a thorough investigation of both the care team and the supervising physicians. In the end, the findings were unsettling. No mistakes, no failures, no one to blame. So how did the patient die even though his condition seemed to be improving? During the investigation, I told the committee that I had noticed something unusual, something I couldn't fully explain. They asked, "What was it?" I said, "Based on my experience, the first patient showed clear signs of blood loss. His vital signs kept dropping until he died, as if his blood was mysteriously vanishing. We gave him emergency care, even transfused blood, but nothing worked. He just kept fading away until he was gone." And the second patient showed the very same symptoms. I witnessed both incidents myself, but here's the most striking part. The first and second patients shared the exact same father's name, the same family name. Were they brothers? Or what exactly was going on? The committee's expressions were filled with disbelief. After all, what kind of bizarre coincidence causes two siblings to fall ill so close in time and die in precisely the same manner? When their details were checked, it became clear. They were brothers, sharing the same father, the same family. The first was 23, the second, 24. The committee wondered aloud. Could this mean their deaths are tied to an illness? Perhaps a hereditary one? Where is the father? Where's the rest of the family? They opened the visitation records, and that's when the unexpected surfaced. Something no one had ever imagined. After the first death, it was the father who claimed the body. He was accompanied by a few visitors, but not a single one of them was family. Only one person stood by him, the second son, who would later die in the next tragedy. When the second son passed away, the scene repeated itself. Once again, the father appeared, surrounded only by strangers, none of them his kin. That's when the authorities called him in, insisting on a blood test, suspecting he might carry some hereditary disease. 2 days later, the father arrived. The shock, he was completely healthy. No hereditary disease, no medical issues at all. And then came the real twist. When we checked his records, we discovered that the boys who had died didn't share the name of his legal wife, meaning the father was married, yes, but not to the mother of the two dead children. Even stranger, the people present at the scene of the boys' deaths had no blood relation to him. From that moment, the tragedy became an investigation, a case the police could not ignore. Something was wrong, something no one could explain. A few days passed, and then came the shocking discovery. During the police investigation, it was revealed that the father was actually married to a woman he deeply loved. But fate had other plans. Despite his affection, they couldn't have children together. When he realized she would never bear him an heir, he entered into a second marriage. Religiously valid, witnessed, but never recorded officially. On paper, he was married to only one woman, but in reality, he was married to 2 women, and his children were from the second wife. Somehow, he managed to open a second family record, completely official and legitimate, just so he could register his 2 children under his own name and their real mother's name. It's as if he bypassed the law without actually breaking it. He never registered the wife, but the children were fully legal, carrying his real name. So everything looked perfectly in order, only in the strangest way you could imagine. The police pressed him. Why was there no family at all when your sons passed away? The loss of someone so young usually draws relatives in droves. Tears, grief, heartbreak everywhere. But instead it was only you and a few unfamiliar faces. What kept your family away? He said, "No one knew I had a second wife. The people who showed up after my children's death were actually her relatives, her brothers, cousins, and in-laws. 2 years after marrying my first wife, I found out she could never have children. I loved and cherished her deeply, but eventually I secretly married again, known only to the witnesses and my second wife's family." The father's words made sense, and the case was closed. There was nothing alarming, nothing to suggest they had died at someone's hands. But about 10 days later, they were struck by a shocking twist. A 46-year-old woman, gravely ill, was rushed into the hospital. The man who brought her was none other than the father of 2 children whose deaths had been shrouded in mystery. With her came her brothers, sisters, and mother. But the most unsettling part? Her name was identical to the mother of the deceased young men, revealing that she was indeed their biological mother, and at the same time, the man's second wife. But what had brought her to the hospital, and why was she in such a terrible state? Doctors rushed to examine her, running blood tests and checking every part of her body to diagnose the illness and start treatment as quickly as possible. The strange thing was, she appeared perfectly healthy. No signs, no symptoms, nothing that matched any known disease. In other words, she was sick. Yet nothing about her body proved she was sick. This time, I was called in because of my specialty in pathology, and the case unfolded late at night. I began reviewing the results, trying to piece together what was happening. Other doctors also stepped in, attempting to understand her condition, but within less than an hour, her state began to deteriorate rapidly, and the first signs of severe blood loss appeared. I decided to give her blood, and they did, large amounts of it, yet nothing changed. Moments later, she died, in exactly the same way as before. The real shock came when her mother passed away. The autopsy revealed something beyond belief. Not a single drop of blood remained in her body. But how could that be? We had personally transfused her. There was no other possible cause of death. That was when I requested to join the forensic autopsy myself. The hospital agreed. After all, this was my field of expertise. I went back to examine the mother's body and carefully retraced every step of the autopsy. What struck me was that her stomach had been completely empty for days, and the entire digestive system showed the same condition. There was only one explanation: she had been fasting for several days. I documented this in my report, and the autopsy team confirmed it. It was the only unusual detail that made it into their final findings before the case was handed over to the police. A new case was opened, a fresh investigation into the mother's death. But this time, things were stranger than ever. If she hadn't eaten at all, maybe it was grief over her children. But the police didn't see it that way. In their eyes, the father himself could be a suspect. If the mother truly hadn't eaten, what if it wasn't by choice? What if she had been locked away, starved? Only God knows. Maybe the father had been trying to get rid of her for reasons only God knows. But when the police questioned him, the story turned upside down. He had actually rented her a house near her family, and she was free to come and go as she pleased. Surveillance cameras backed him up, and the strangest part, just one day before, the mother had gone to her family's home feeling unwell. They took care of her, fed her, and everything seemed completely normal. Even witnesses swore she ate just fine, though her digestive system told a chillingly different story. She hadn't eaten for days. I had no idea, but that's exactly what was written, word for word. But during the investigation, here's what really went down. Whenever someone gave their testimony, the police demanded proof. So when the mother's family claimed she had visited them just one day earlier, their evidence came straight from their own security cameras. Footage of her arriving at their house. And not just that, there were also surveillance tapes from the father's home. But when the investigators started rewinding the family's security footage, he noticed something chilling. Exactly 10 days earlier, in the dead of night, a woman appeared in the corner of the frame. She stopped, tossed some kind of round object toward the father's house, and quickly vanished before anyone could see her. 10 days later, she returned, repeating the exact same act. And 10 days before that, the very same woman in the very same spot throwing the very same object. The investigator had no clue what she had tossed or why she had done it in the first place. He ordered a patrol unit to sweep the corner of the property, and the team also pulled footage from the father's cameras, hoping the woman's face was captured. But the recordings showed nothing. The blind spots swallowed it all. Inside the backyard, however, they stumbled upon 3 odd bundles of cloth hurled randomly over the wall. What lay inside was something even the police wouldn't dare to approach. Most of you can probably sense where this is going. Dark magic. What the police uncovered, shown here in the mildest, least graphic way for your sake, was beyond belief. A human digestive system, fully intact, torn from a body, and hidden inside a cloth ball. Not just one, 3 other balls held the same horrific contents. Inside each, bizarre scripts, strange talismans, and the names of every victim in that cursed family. The 2 sons and their helpless mother. A sight so disturbing no one could have imagined it, let alone endured looking at it. That's why I'll try to upload the photos Dr. Majed shared with me, these mysterious balls, onto my Telegram channel together with the rest of the images I've collected. The link will be in the description and the pinned comment. Let's hope Telegram doesn't block them. And here's where it gets even crazier. Dr. Majed explains that the shock turned into 2 shocks, because the moment the father saw them, he instantly identified the woman who had tossed those things into his yard. And if you're thinking that was his first wife, let me stop you right there. You're wrong. The father, just by looking at the footage and catching a glimpse of the woman from afar, instantly recognized her. She wasn't a wife at all. She was the maid, the very same maid who worked inside the house of his first wife. So the real question is, how did she end up at his second home? How did she even know about it? And most importantly, why would she do something like this? And right away, the police moved in and arrested the maid. They confirmed it was indeed the same woman caught on camera. But here's where things get strange. In the father's first house, the one he had with his first wife, the surveillance cameras would mysteriously shut off at night, right at the same moment the maid was leaving the house. It was as if someone wanted to make sure no evidence was recorded. The cameras themselves were fully functional, yet they kept going dark, which raised the chilling possibility the maid wasn't acting alone. And so began a long, grueling interrogation with the maid, trying to uncover what role she played in the children's deaths and in the mysterious passing of the second wife. The investigation's shocking outcome left me stunned, and it will shake you just as it did the police, the detectives, and everyone who heard this story. The maid, it turned out, was a sorceress, and for no apparent reason, she decided to get rid of the stepmother, the second wife, a woman no one really knew much about. Does that sound logical to you? Of course not. After relentless questioning, she finally confessed to what you're about to hear. The first wife had long noticed her husband was always busy, often away from home under the pretext of work and endless responsibilities. But once she learned she would never be able to have children, doubts crept in. She began to suspect he might have another wife. Determined to uncover the truth, she started keeping a discreet eye on him. And over the course of many years, she discovered the shocking reality. He was married to another woman and even had children with her, all without him ever realizing that she knew. Until he began selling off parts of his properties and companies, assets that in truth had originally belonged to his first wife. She had generously handed a large share over to him, hoping it would help him become a successful businessman, but instead he started selling them, claiming it was all for a massive new venture. By sheer coincidence, the first wife stumbled upon a sales contract bearing her husband's name alongside the name of one of his sons. She realized he was transferring all his companies to his sons, a sign he could abandon her at any time. It felt like her husband had already built a second life, a new family, leaving her discarded, her place erased. Determined not to lose everything, she chose a darker path, to bring that second family down so he would have no choice but to return to the first. Through the maid, she set plans into motion, sorcery, spying, every trick imaginable, until death claimed the children and the second wife. He was in shock. The first wife turned out to be at the heart of it all. Yet when confronted with hard evidence and even the maid's confession, she denied any involvement. Legally, she remained untouchable. There was no proof, only accusations. And by law, the accused is innocent until proven guilty. So the maid ended up taking the fall, and the father believed her testimony. Still, it made far more sense that the first wife was the mastermind. The maid had nothing to gain from such a scheme. He transferred all properties and companies to his first wife, abandoned her, and even filed a lawsuit against her. After ongoing investigations, it was revealed that she was involved in the tragic deaths of these poor souls. The first piece of evidence, huge sums of money moved from her account to the maid's account, numbers so staggering they pointed to a secret collusion between the two. The second point is about the camera system installed in the first wife's house. It was highly sophisticated and extremely secure, making it impossible for anyone to access or disable it, except the first wife or the husband. This too served as a clear piece of evidence. When confronted with this, she eventually confessed the truth. However, to protect her reputation, nothing else about the case was revealed, neither the court ruling nor the continuation of the investigation. Dr. Majid says, "After hearing everything that happened, I was shocked and immediately sought refuge from Satan. Sometimes people may look human, but their deeds are the work of devils. I returned to my regular duties, and soon enough, I was rewarded with both a bonus and a promotion. My small observation had actually played a pivotal role in unraveling the very first thread of this case. He was offered the opportunity to proceed as a forensic pathologist. He thought about it, and since he was comfortable with his job, he preferred not to change his place. He actually stayed in the same job until events forced him to change his profession from a supervising doctor in the intensive care unit to the forensics department." Dr. Majid says, "A few days after these incidents, while I was working my usual night shift, I entered the room where the two brothers had died. That's when I saw a young man inside, an exact replica of one of the brothers. I looked around for the person in charge of the room, but no one was there. I slowly approached the young man, and indeed, he looked exactly the same right next to me. He opened his eyes and murmured, 'Hi, Dr. Majid,' his voice faint and strained from his dire state. I greeted him back and asked for his name since I had no paperwork on him. He said, 'My name is so-and-so.' I swear, I was shocked. It was the exact same name as the young man who had died in this very place. Same face, same name. Everything, word for word. The young man asked me to enter the private bathroom of the room, and I helped him walk. I was utterly stunned. I thought it was impossible for him to be the same person. Maybe just a coincidence. The same face, the same name. But for it to be him, the one who had died, that was absolutely impossible. He went into the bathroom while I waited in the room for about 5 minutes. Just then, a nurse came in and asked, "Is everything okay, doctor?" I told her it was nothing, that I was just helping the patient get to the bathroom. She seemed surprised and said, "But I wasn't informed there was a patient in this room." I explained, "Maybe he's new, but he's in the bathroom." I called him out, and sure enough, he responded that he was fine. The nurse was baffled because she didn't know who in the bathroom. We waited for a full 10 minutes, calling him again to see if he needed help. But there was no answer. I had no choice but to open the door, and to our shock, the bathroom was empty. Where had the patient gone? God only knows. Yet the nurse swore she had also heard his voice answering from inside the bathroom. This incident repeated itself with multiple doctors and several witnesses, who all claimed to see the two brothers in the same room, while the room was supposed to be empty. This was what pushed me to request a transfer to the forensic department, because I thought, this room is officially haunted. Two brothers had died under mysterious circumstances linked to black magic, and only God knows the truth. It's said among doctors that this room is haunted. They claim to see figures and hear strange voices from within, even when it's empty. As a result, it was closed and repurposed as the hospital's janitorial room. The strangest thing I've ever seen happened one day when I walked into the room and saw a strange young guy holding a phone. I asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "I came to check out your past episodes." He also subscribed, hit the notification bell, and shared the video so he could catch the upcoming episodes. So, what are you waiting for, my friend? Follow me on Instagram to see my life beyond YouTube. I'm Ahmed. Goodbye. This patient, after the autopsy, had no internet inside him. By God, he had no internet. Well, may God have mercy on him, God willing. This is the legitimate mother of them. And also, I seek... It doesn't die. What is this mosquito? And when we confronted it and the evidence in the garden, as a doctor, what is this mosquito? I killed it. It was crushed. It was completely ground, not just crushed. Well, may God have mercy on it. God willing.